Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guests. Today, we are doing something extra special. We don't just have one legend from the golden age of theatre, but the ultimate powerhouse duo themselves. Joining me from across the decades, please welcome Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II. Gents, it is an absolute thrill to have you here. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
Well, I am Richard Rodgers, and I compose the music.
And I am Oscar Hammerstein II, and I wrote the lyrics and the books. Together, we wrote a few shows you might have heard of, like Oklahoma, Carousel, South Pacific, The King and I, and The Sound of Music. We like to think we helped change the face of musical theater just a bit by making the songs actually drive the story forward.
You absolutely revolutionized it. Let's go back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on June 28, 1902, in a summer house near Arverne in Queens, New York, though we moved to Upper Manhattan shortly after.
And I was born a bit before Dick, on July 12, 1895, right in the heart of New York City.
So both native New Yorkers. What were your given names at birth?
Mine was simply Richard Charles Rodgers.
And I was named Oscar Clendenning Hammerstein II.
Is there a story behind your birth name, Oscar?
There is indeed. I was named after my grandfather, the first Oscar Hammerstein. He was a wildly famous, larger-than-life opera impresario and showman. Carrying that name in New York City meant carrying a huge theatrical legacy, which was both inspiring and a little daunting.
I can imagine. What was your hometown like growing up?
New York City around the turn of the century was vibrant, fast, and completely mesmerizing. It was a city of transitions, horse-drawn carriages sharing the streets with early automobiles, and the theater district was growing into the glowing Broadway we know today.
Yes, it was a melting pot of sounds, sights, and endless energy. There was music everywhere, from the street organs to the grand theaters. It was the perfect place for two boys obsessed with melodies and stories to grow up.
What was your family life like?
My family life was a bit tight and filled with tension. My parents bickered quite a bit, partly due to my maternal grandmother's very forceful personality. But it was a theater-loving household. My parents saw all the Broadway shows, and my mother would play the sheet music on the piano at home.
Mine was steeped entirely in show business. My father, William, managed the famous Victoria Theater, which was the top vaudeville house of its day. My uncle Arthur was a prominent Broadway producer. Show business was the family dinner table conversation every single night.
What kind of kids were you?
I was a total theater kid before the term even existed. I learned to play the piano as a toddler, and by the time I was a teenager, I was already composing my own songs. I lived inside my own head a lot, matching notes together.
I was active and loved sports, but I was also deeply analytical and drawn to writing. Because of my family, I spent a lot of time hanging around theaters, completely captivated by how a show was put together from behind the scenes.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
For me, it was the heavy emotional tension in my household. I hated the arguments. And my fear was that the harmony could be disrupted at any moment. I think that's why I retreated so deeply into the order and beauty of music.
I think my biggest fear was failing the family name. When you have a grandfather who is a legendary opera producer, the bar is set incredibly high. I worried I wouldn't live up to the Hammerstein theatrical standard.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
From the moment I understood what a piano was, I knew I wanted to write music for the theater. There was never a backup plan for me.
Believe it or not, despite my love for the theater, my father wanted a more stable life for me. So for a long time, I actually set out to become a lawyer.
A lawyer, wow. What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I loved anything to do with the school variety shows. At DeWitt Clinton High School, I was always involved in the musical productions.
At Columbia University, my absolute favorite activity was writing and performing in the varsity shows. That's actually where Dick and I first crossed paths in the mid-19 teens, even though we didn't become partners until much later.
What was your first job?
My first professional credits started around 1920, writing amateur varsity-type shows and small musical pieces.
My very first theater job was working as an assistant stage manager for my uncle, Arthur Hammerstein. I left Columbia Law School after my second year because the pull of the stage was just too strong, and I had to start from the bottom.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
For me, it was when I realized I could play tunes on the piano by ear as a mere toddler, long before I ever had a lesson. Music was a native language to me in a way it wasn't for my peers.
It was when I was sitting in law school lectures and realized my notebooks were filled with song lyrics and play plots instead of legal briefs. I knew then I belonged in the theater, not a courtroom.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
In 1941, my longtime lyricist partner, Larry Hart, was in a terribly steep decline due to illness. I drove out to Oscar's farm in Pennsylvania just to have a friendly chat about the possibility of us working together if Larry couldn't continue. It felt like a simple, cautious conversation at the time, but it ended up birthing our entire partnership.
What was your biggest break?
Our biggest break together was undoubtedly Oklahoma in 1943. It was our very first collaboration, and we integrated the songs, ballet, and script into one seamless story. It ran for over 2,000 performances and completely shifted how musicals were written.
What were your biggest struggles before that success?
Oh, the struggle to get Oklahoma off the ground was immense. Potential investors were incredibly nervous because we were an untested partnership. Beyond that, the Theater Guild had been suffering commercial failures, and I personally had gone nearly 11 years without a major box office hit. People thought we were a risky bet.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Before Oscar and I teamed up, during the early 1920s, Larry Hart and I were struggling so badly to find success on Broadway that I genuinely considered quitting the music business entirely to take a job selling children's underwear. Thankfully, a benefit show we wrote called The Garrett Gaieties became a smash hit just in time.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
For me, it was a rigorous professional work ethic. I didn't wait for inspiration to strike. I sat down and treated composing like a regular job. When Oscar sent me a lyric, I sat at the piano and worked until the melody was right.
My routine was all about long, solitary walks on my farm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I would pace around the grounds for days, chewing on a single line or a rhyme scheme until it was absolutely perfect. Writing lyrics is slow, meticulous work.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I suppose I really would have ended up in the garment industry selling underwear, as unglamorous as that sounds.
And I would have likely finished my degree and become a very miserable corporate lawyer.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a whirlwind of hustle. Late nights in smoky rooms, writing songs for small reviews, and constantly trying to convince producers to take a chance on a couple of young kids from New York.
How did relationships change after success?
Success certainly brings a lot of new friends into your circle, but it also creates a lot of pressure. For me, the most difficult part was watching my former partner, Larry Hart, struggle while my new partnership with Oscar flourished. It was heartbreaking.
Did fame bring happiness?
Fame itself is just a byproduct. True happiness came from the satisfaction of a job well done. Hearing an audience applaud a song that you spent weeks agonizing over, or seeing a story touch people's hearts.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The immense pressure to repeat your success. Once you write Oklahoma, everyone expects your next show to be even bigger and better. The artistic expectations can be quite heavy.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often thought that because our shows were full of beautiful melodies and uplifting themes, we were simple, old-fashioned romantics. But we tackled very serious issues in our work, like racism in South Pacific and domestic struggles in Carousel. We weren't just writing fluff.
What was your darkest moment?
For me, it was watching Larry Hart decline and eventually pass away right as Oklahoma was becoming a massive success. It was a terribly bittersweet time.
And for me, it was that 11-year stretch of commercial failures before Oklahoma. Walking into theatrical offices, knowing people whispered that you were washed up, was incredibly difficult.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I always wished I could have done more to help Larry overcome his personal battles, though I knew deep down I couldn't change his path.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
When we were working on our musical Allegro, we attempted a highly experimental concept musical about an average man struggling with success. It didn't connect with audiences the way our other shows did, and it faced heavy criticism. We handled it by keeping our heads down, learning from the experience, and channeling our energy right into our next project, which happened to be South Pacific.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It certainly made life much more comfortable. It allowed us to produce our own shows, buy beautiful homes, and have the creative freedom to write exactly what we wanted without relying on outside investors.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
Musically, the operettas and Broadway shows my parents brought home. Professionally, Oscar, who challenged me to write music that matched his profound lyrics.
And for me, my grandfather, Oscar I, who gave me the love for the grand scale of theater. And Jerome Kern, who I collaborated with on Showboat and taught me how a musical could have real dramatic weight.
What was life like in your final years?
In my final years, I kept composing because music was my lifeblood, though health challenges began to slow me down.
For me, life on the farm in Pennsylvania was peaceful. I spent my time writing, mentoring young writers like Stephen Sondheim, and working on our final masterpiece.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
We were working on The Sound of Music. It was a beautiful project to go out on.
Yes, the very last song Oscar and I ever wrote together was Edelweiss, which we added during the show's Boston tryouts.
When and where did you pass away, Oscar?
I passed away at my farm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania on August 23, 1960. I was 65 years old.
And I lived on for a number of years, continuing to write, until I passed away in New York City on December 30th, 1979, at the age of 77.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
When I was 14 years old, I composed my very first song, and it was titled My Auto Show Girl.
And for me, despite being a giant of the American musical theater, I actually spent years serving on the board of directors for the Screenwriters Guild and the Dramatists Guild, fighting for writers' rights.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
People used to rumor that Oscar and I secretly disliked each other because we didn't socialize constantly outside of work. The truth is, we had a profoundly respectful, deeply affectionate partnership. We just both valued our family time and worked in a highly professional manner.
What was your most unique habit?
I used to stand up while writing my lyrics. I had a tall desk made so I could pace and write on my feet.
What was your favorite food?
I always loved a good, classic New York steak dinner.
And I was a big fan of simple, hearty American farmhouse cooking out in Pennsylvania.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Not personal rivalries, but certainly healthy artistic competitions with the other great writers of our era, like Cole Porter or Irving Berlin. It pushed us all to be better.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
During the tryouts for Oklahoma, it was originally called Away We Go, and the show wasn't quite coming together. We decided we needed a massive, show-stopping number near the end, so we added the song Oklahoma with a full chorale arrangement. The crowd went absolutely wild, and we literally renamed the entire show after that one song.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
During one of our early tryouts, a piece of the stage scenery completely jammed and refused to move. The actors had to keep improvising and singing their hearts out in front of a mismatched backdrop for nearly 20 minutes, while the stagehands hammered away furiously behind them.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Don't wait for inspiration. Treat your craft like a job, show up every single day, and put in the work.
And make sure you have something real to say. The music and the words must always serve the truth of the story you were trying to tell.
Fantastic advice. Gents, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
Just that it has been a marvelous privilege to revisit these memories. Theater is all about connection, and we hope our music continues to bring people together just as it did all those decades ago. Thank you so much for having us, Calvin.
Keep singing, keep telling stories, and thank you for a wonderful afternoon.
Wow, what an incredible journey through the history of Broadway with the legendary Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II. From their early days in New York and the high-stakes gamble of Oklahoma, to the creation of timeless classics like The Sound of Music, their partnership truly redefined American culture. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.